Right. Well, welcome everyone. I'm so excited that y'all are here with Jeremiah Captain and myself. Just when you get in, feel free to start in the chat. Let us know where you're coming from and what you do for a living. That'd be really nice to know a little bit more about who's in the room with us and how we can kind of gear this conversation towards you to make it as meaningful as possible. Awesome. Rochester, Minnesota. Let's go, Jody. Jody is our Vice President of NAWIC, so it's great to see her here. Laleen Mitchell is our immediate past, well, not immediate, but past president, past national president.
Leading from
And
the front.
there we go. We got some power in the room. All right, Bellevue, Washington. Sounds great. Thanks for joining us. And Laura, what is it that you do? There's Mercedes. All right, Amy from Texas. Feel free to shout out your job title too, so we again can kind of make sure that we're gearing it towards you and what you do. Sustainability. Oh, that's so awesome, Laura. Marketing manager. Perfect person to be here. Thanks, Amy. Yay, Laleen is director of pre-construction and Dana is superintendent. Project coordinator is Miss Shirley for Rogers O'Brien Construction in Austin. Excellent. The room is filling up with all sorts of powerful women in construction. I'm looking forward to this conversation getting going. And I'll go on mute so Mercedes can. Awesome. We have a Canadian sister with us in Vancouver.
Hello. How is everyone? We hear me and see me? Okay, perfect. Sorry, it's my headphones aren't working. But thank you all for coming to the second day of Construction Inclusion Week. We are so happy. We're so happy to have you all here. We are, doing a series of webinars this week, really focusing on the different themes of Construction Inclusion Week. And today's theme is belonging. We're just really excited to have Jeremiah Captain here with us. He is somebody that I know really well and have had the pleasure of working with over the past year or so. And I just kind of wanted to give him a brief little intro and his bio. So I've had the pleasure of working with him on DEI training and have been a part of a belonging and culture workshop that we just finished hosting 10 sessions for a local general contractor here in the Seattle area. So that's been really amazing. And him and his business partner, Riddell, are fantastic and come from the industry, know the industry, and have a lot of really great information to share. Jeremiah, he's the vice president of X Factor Partners, a consulting firm that partners with organizations to ensure their business objectives are met in the areas of professional and personal development and diversity. He also is the co-founder of a program and nonprofit called Construct Diversity, which is a pre-apprenticeship exposure program for marginalized youth in the Seattle area. And with over 8 years of experience in construction, including project management, estimating, sales, and 15 years in business development, he is just very skilled and experienced professional with a passion for DEI. In his role at X Factor, he utilizes his 15 years of experience in business development and his strategic mindset and strong relationship skills have really been pivotal in forging successful partnerships and driving growth. As a founder of Construct Diversity, he's really committed to providing opportunities to learn about construction and real estate industry and to pursue careers. He's probably going to talk a little bit about that program, and it's just such a cool program. So I'm really excited for him to share. The program has been a huge success, and part of their success encouraged me to start my own nonprofit. So I'm excited for him to talk about that and how he's helping youth of all different backgrounds really try to fit into this industry. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Jeremiah and Lisa.
Well, thank you so much, Mercedes. I feel honored and privileged to be asked to come on here and share with your amazing flock and leaders that you have across the country. I think it's uh, Miss Mitchell. You're from Oakland, California. That's where I'm from. So I saw that. So we got some Bay Area folks in here, and here's some folks from Canada. You guys are touching the whole North America. So excited to be on here to share a little bit about my background, what I'm up to in the world, and this message in Bay Area. Yeah, we're a little different, right? In a good way. And we'll talk about that with the differences and how that affects how we build our companies, right? Accepting people from all walks of life, even our crazy Bay Area folks. They say the world is tilted because all the nuts roll to California or to the West Coast, right? So I like to start by saying, I'm like a blindfolded discus thrower. I may not always hit the mark, but I hope to always at least keep your attention. So I'm going to come on here. I have some slides that I'm going to share. We just got done putting together a great workshop that we did. I'm going to kind of really condense the workshop that we did. That was about 90 minutes to could have been 3 hours or could have been a weekend workshop at the Four Seasons on how to create a dynamic culture and how to make sure people are belonging in your organization. And with the foundation of that, the most critical thing is establishing trust with your people. So I'm going to, kick this thing off as I'm kind of reading over. Okay. As you guys saw, I dropped in the comments our nonprofit that we have, Construct Diversity. I'll weave that in throughout the presentation and talk about what we do there. But if you want to click on the link and check out what we do, our main focus is just providing access and opportunity and connections to individuals that historically have been boxed out of this industry, and we're doing that in the greater Seattle area. So I'm going to do some screen sharing, and then we'll get started. And I probably won't be able to see you guys once I do the screen share through this. So if Lisa, if you can maybe chime in and just say, yes, everything's fine once I hit share.
I got you, Jeremiah.
Right, thank you. Let's see. Right from the start. All right, can you see that clearly? Lisa, you there? Are we
Yes, good
good?
to go.
Okay.
Good to go.
All right, good to go. All right, thank you guys. So here's a little bit of background about me. Jeremiah Virgo from Oakland, California, but I live in Seattle, Washington now. And I have a couple images just to bring me to wholeness to the team to see a little bit of my background. I start off with the story off to the left. That image is my mentor, Mr. Bruce Lang, who I met in high school. He was my high school football coach. And during practice, he would be on the sideline calling plays, but at the same time taking a break on the cell phone, dropping some very vulgar language to an individual on the other side. I didn't know if he was in the mob or if he was in construction. Turned out he was in construction. And that's how I got introduced to this industry. He worked for a lighting rep. His background was an electrician. But before we met and became really dear friends. He established trust in my life by being my coach. And then he became my mentor and helped me get into this industry. And then we started this program, Construct Diversity. And I'll tell a little bit more about that as a little bit later. But we kind of started this 20 years ago with our relationship. And he grew up in Oakland, California, 20 years before I grew up. 20 blocks from the neighborhood I grew up in, and him and his white mother and his white brothers were living with a black man that his white mother was dating. So he had an interesting lifestyle growing up in some different culture dynamics. But he was able to see some of the challenges that happened in our community. And he was able to relate to people that come from my background as he got older in life. As he became successful, ran a very successful lighting rep company down the Bay Area, he chose to move up to the Seattle area. And when I got done chasing that professional football dream, the joke is I was drafted by the Seahawks to watch them practice. And no, I wasn't drafted. I was trying to get into their mini camp, but I wasn't good enough to make it. And when I got down on my luck, guess what I had? I had a relationship, just like a lot of us on these calls. or a lot of people that come from this industry, like most industries, get into it because of a relationship. I had a relationship with Mr. Bruce Lang. He hired me. I worked for him for 4 years as a project manager, helping light fixtures get ordered from the manufacturing, shipping through the electrical distributor, showing up on the job site for electrical contractor, and being installed. And you guys, and gals understand how that process works from there. And then I didn't really like what I was doing here. So he helped me transition. Then I went and worked for one of the bigger electrical contractors in the Seattle market. I worked for about 1.5 years as an estimator. Didn't really like that, but I got to really learn the ins and out and behind the blueprints of how the sausage was made in this industry. So then I wanted to kind of test my luck out in the field. I became, someone that was loved to communicate. I got into business development and sales for electrical distributor. And I did that for about another 2 years. But quite frankly, back in those days, I didn't see a lot of people that look like me, people that I can relate to, people that I can connect with. So I transitioned out and went and started my own company. Like a lot of people sometimes have to do when they don't feel like they belong in an organization, they leave. They go to another organization or they go start their own venture. And that's what I did. All right. So there's a little bit about me. I'm a co-parent in the middle. Those are my 2 beautiful daughters in the middle. That's the mother of my child off to the left that if you're facing. And then that's her husband, Nico, and their child. We have a motto in our family: different homes, but one family. We try to make it work as best as we can. So I like to advocate for having healthy co-parenting relationship, even if it's not possible, but I still like to just be a message of what can be possible for those people that may be searching for that. And then we have this program, Construct Diversity, off to the right. Those are like my little babies right there. I feel like I'm a father and a brother and a mentor to so many young youth. And what we really exist to do is provide access, opportunity, and connections to individuals, as I said earlier, that historically have been boxed out of this industry. Now, when I get to talk about this topic around culture and belonging, diversity and inclusion in the construction world, I know we get a lot of pushback. So everyone that is on the call isn't always our friends. Malcolm X used to always start some of his conversations by saying, "Good evening, friends and family, but also some of the enemies," because we would be a fool to think that we didn't have some enemies in the room. I don't believe there's really any enemies listening to this call, but there may be some pushback when we have that conversation around, hey, we're in the construction business. We're not in the feeling business, and that is true. You are in the construction business, but we also are more importantly in the people business. And we have to understand how to connect with different people from all walks of life. And this is a new wave and a new trend that's trending in the right direction as innovation always happens. We used to get on planes back in the day. I remember being young and being on a plane and people were smoking cigarettes, right? Over 20, 30 years ago, you can go to your local shop, maybe somewhere in the rural areas, you could still do that in the bars and the restaurants, and you could smoke a cigarette, right? But things have changed. Things have innovated for the better to help all people have a better quality of life. That's the same thing that's happening in this industry. And what we're starting to see, even here in the Northwest, it's not only mattering in the public sector, it's mattering in the private sector. We're seeing customers genuinely care about what does your organization look like. Not only does it, I don't know if we have some stuff in the chat. I'm not able to read that. Let me make sure if I'm missing anything. Small world. Oh, there we go. Hey, Cutie, good job. Bruce, the whole PLS group. Yes, you do know. All right, we'll catch up later about that. Sorry, I was just trying to, make sure I wasn't missing anything in the chat. So yeah, small world, right? Very, very, very small. But as I was alluding to, it matters to the customer. So whatever matters to the customer, it should matter to you. And it should matter to your company. So that's how I'm able to kind of unfold some arms when we go into these conversations around working with contractors, sometimes individuals out in the field, sometimes people in the office, sometimes leadership, sometimes management, of like, why does all this matter? Because first and foremost, you're not just in the construction business, you're in the people business. And we're starting to evolve of how we lead people in a more efficient manner, right, than the traditional top-down aggressive style leadership. So we're still in a rigorous industry where I like to say, like, we have to have that rigor in construction. We want to have that Marine Corps mindset, but we all want to have that Peace Corps heart to understand how do we connect this younger generation, because as we said, I think we were talking about earlier, by 2030, we're losing so many skilled labor individuals, and we're also losing individuals out inside the office, the estimators, the project managers, the owners of companies. Like, people are looking to sell and go off and ride off into the golden parachute and move on. So there's a huge opportunity for the next wave of leaders in this industry. And we want to make sure that when they come, they know that they can actually win here. And it's difficult and it's tough, like any industry, but they're not being boxed out because of where they come from, maybe socially, economically, or culturally. We don't want that to be the issue of why they don't stay. They may not stay because it's not the industry for them, but we never want to be the reason why, because they didn't feel like they belonged or fit in, and we'll talk about here next. All right. So when I talk about culture, belonging, and trust, let's bring it to the reality of this industry. So we use a house. Some of you guys are in residential. A lot of individuals are on the commercial side, but we all can go back to understanding, what does the house look like? So the culture is the roof, and the belonging are the walls, and trust is the foundation. So what does the culture do? The culture provides protection and structure, just like a roof shields a building. But a strong culture is assuring an alignment and safeguards the company from any type of challenge, right? When you have that dynamic culture. Also, we have to make sure we understand, just like a roof, you can't, a traditional roof, you could throw it on there for 20, 30, 40 years and it's going to be okay if you get the right roof, right? But you need to not just set and forget your culture and your organization. It's something that always has to be refined and worked on daily. And it's not just a top down, it's from a bottom up, it's from sides, it's all the way around. You have to work on that culture day in and day out, all right? Some things I want to talk about: the belongings are the walls. That's your structural support. That's what creates the safe space. It defines the functions of certain rooms. That's what walls do, right? So your belonging defines the function. It creates safe spaces for individuals from different walks of life to feel like they don't just fit, but they actually belong in that organization. They can perform at the highest level, right? And then trust is the foundation. If we don't have trust, we have no foundation. We have no foundation. Guess what? We can't build any walls. We can't keep that roof up. It all comes tumbling down. But also, trust helps for growth and expansion, because how tall can you build a building? As tall as the foundation will support it, right? We'll talk more about trust as we go into the presentation. So, as I spoke about earlier, times have changed. I use some sports analogies. Forgive me if I use too many of those. I know sometimes we are in a dominant industry where sports analogies get used a lot, but I'm going to bring some more into it. So this was, if you look back in time, the world champions Lakers in the 1950s. When you're trying to build a championship team, some of you guys may have seen this image before. But it's quite funny, like that. When you're building a championship team, you want the best of the best, right? You don't just deal with people in your backyard. You go all over the world to find the best people to be in the right position to win that championship. And at the 1950s, that was the time that they thought those individuals were the best individuals to win that championship. Over time, obviously, athletics have shown that's not the case, right? There's people from all walks of life and background that support and win the championship. I like to use this image off to the right. In the early 2000s through the teens of the 2000s, the San Antonio Spurs have historically had the most highest winning percentage. That may change over the next few years as other teams start to evolve and win. But historically, the San Antonio Spurs have always had a very culturally diverse team. They've had individuals, they were always going overseas to get talent from the different parts of Europe. Their coach, their leadership, he actually had the first woman actually coach a professional basketball game. So they've done some things that have sometimes been looked out or frowned upon, but it historically has proven in their dominance and their winning their championships, because when you have that rich diversity with the type of inclusion and that type of belonging, then you can have some championships. All right. So what is culture? Simply put, it's the shared values and goals and attitudes and practices that characterize an organization. So culture just creates the feel of an organization. When you come into an organization, we just got recently done working with one of the bigger premier general contractors in the town, who started with a small operation back in the day, and they've grown tremendously. And that culture has changed over the years, but I was so impressed just like sometimes I walk into certain contractors, I could just tell some of the cultures just aren't dynamic. But this company has a true dynamic culture, and you could feel it when you come in. There's a saying from Peter Drucker that culture eats strategy for breakfast. You can have a dynamic strategy, but if you don't have the right culture, then you're going to lose to a team that may not have the best strategy, but that team that works together and efficiently and know each other at the highest level, they're going to perform better. So culture is simply just a shared way of doing something with passion. We work in a very difficult industry. If we can find to love the people that we're with, or not just tolerate, but also enjoy being around them and work with a sense of passion, we're going to outperform those teams that don't have that same type of engagement. All right. So when you treat the employees like they make a difference, then they truly will. So this is speaking to the leaders. So when the leaders have that type of mindset, with empowering their people, we're not just worried about just their workplace productivity, but the whole person, then those individuals are going to outperform other organizations. So you are really lucky to have an organization like NAWIC that has those shared beliefs in that continued professional and personal development, so that they can focus on the entire individual, not just your work productivity. You have a chance to excel and better things in life, and perform better and have upward mobility in your career. All right. So culture just isn't top down. It's shaped by every employee's actions and interactions, and each person plays a major role in maintaining that. All right. So let me go over here before I move on, make sure I'm not missing anything. Just reading a couple notes. Hey, welcome. Hey, Becky, we can align. We also can align with sports. Not everyone should be the Q big. Yeah, that's good. I like that. All right. Sorry, guys. Just trying to make sure I'm not missing anything. So I have a saying that in God we trust, but everyone else has to bring data. You got to back up what you're saying with data. All right. So 21% of job seekers say that a poor culture is the top reason why they're leaving an organization. That's from a 22 employee survey. A toxic workplace costs U.S. employees $50 billion in turnover per year. All right. I mean, smaller companies, bigger companies, no matter what, when you hire someone and they work there for 3-6 months and you potentially lose that individual, that's a highly expensive challenge, right? And that's why some people say, hire slow, fire quickly, right? I know we've probably heard some of those things before, because it's very expensive to bring someone on and then lose them, all the costs associated with that. So we have to look within if we are not able to retain people. What is the reason? Is it just because the industry? Is it just because the individuals aren't potentially understanding what this type of work requires? Or is there something that we aren't doing effectively to retain those individuals? All right. And then they're 7 times more likely to have employees innovating and performing great work when we have a strong culture. So this is when we have that diversity in the organization, because if we're losing, I think there's a number from this, I don't have this data right here, but I have it written down. The associates, builders, contractors data point said they need 500,000 new trade men and women to go into this industry every year to keep up with the fall off of the retirement of carpenters and other tradesmen and women that are going down. So how do we pick up that slack to get young people to be exposed to this, if the traditional way of getting those individuals in these industries, where more of the overrepresented counterparts who've worked those jobs, they've somewhat probably watched their father or their moms work in this industry, and they probably don't want to do it because they watch some of what has been perceived as toxic cultures that they went through, or sometimes demanding hours that they've had to work with. So they're trying to go other ways. So how do we attract a new market of individuals that maybe have no understanding of what this industry looks like? We have to get out and build those relationships, partner with organizations that Mercedes talked about, what she's doing with the Build Her program, programs like mine, Construct Diversity. There's other programs out there that are doing that as well, but we are really lacking getting that exposure to those different diverse backgrounds, right? So diverse perspectives and experience make the company more adaptive and innovating. Inclusion ensures that all voices are heard and valued, but you also bring in that psychological safety and well-being when you have a dynamic culture. So you're not always going to be happy at work, right? I know this is a data point that says happy workers are 12% more productive, but if you can enjoy what you're doing, there does bring a little sense of joy and sensation. So there's some days it's just difficult and tough and rigorous, and that's just happiness just goes out the window. We got to get the job done. But we should not be creating environments that are attacking people for any other reason beyond just the stress of work, right? This work is stressful enough. So we want to do our best to have that term that you probably have heard through multiple presentations, psychological safety, that well-being. We just got done with Mental Health Awareness Month. We're seeing that a lot of individuals have struggled with mental health in this industry because they just ran from the vulnerability conversation, just focused on getting the job done. And how has that affected their lives long term? Like, just because those individuals are getting to retire, I just lost a dear mentor that was one of the owners of this company here just recently. And he wasn't in a labor's position, but I can only imagine the type of stress that maybe he dealt with overall being in this type of industry. How do we help alleviate some of that unnecessary stress? Because stress is the silent killer over time that can catch up to you, right? So how do we help create that dynamic culture and belonging through the organizations, all right? As I move on to the next slide, I want to make sure. Oh, sorry. I'll come back to that. This is something that I don't want to take credit for this. This is something that that Mercedes brought to our presentation. I thought it was really important to bring this out because it was so impactful and powerful. Because culture is in the middle of how results and actions are created. Normally, when we look at what's going on in the organization, we look at results, production, performance. Okay, what's happening? We're not winning work, or this person isn't performing. So what's the result? All right. But if we reverse engineer, it goes back to traditionally our actions, because actions create results. But what creates actions? It's the beliefs. It's our experiences. It's the things we expose to. So it's like the iceberg. You look at the top, what's happening, but underneath all that, it's based off our experiences, our belief, and our actions that drive those type of results. And the culture, it sits right in the middle of that. If I'm in a dynamic culture, I'm going to believe that the organization cares about me based off the experiences I've seen. That's going to have me take different type of actions, which should produce different type of results. If I'm in a culture that I don't believe cares about me, or a dynamic culture, I'm going to be very territorial. I'm going to be boxed off based off the experience I've seen. It's going to lead me to believe certain things about the organization. I'm going to take different type of actions, and they may not always produce the most dynamic results. All right. So culture is built through actions. Everyone can contribute to the culture. Culture shapes the behavior, and culture is dynamic. So we never want to overlook that. You can look at that, and once again, we go back to some of the sports stuff. When the culture is dynamic, you look at a team that's winning, you can go back and look at the culture. And when a culture is not performing and they're losing, they're pointing the finger, they're blaming, their coaches are getting fired, is all this, kind of politics and drama. The culture is not as dynamic, right? We can see that in real life. All right. So now I like to transition and talk about belonging. Belonging is something you can take to the bank, because when you have that dynamic culture, that means people should feel like they belong. If the culture isn't good, that feels like they don't belong. And then that's where we get into that toxic relationships amongst each other, right? So I like to use this storyline of diversity is like being invited to the dance. So we can have a diverse group of individuals, and if we don't have that type of inclusion and belonging, then there's sometimes anarchy, because you put a bunch of different people in the same room together and they don't know how to communicate. They don't have that cultural competency and learning how to communicate with different people from different walks of life. Guess what starts to happen? Conflict, right? So diversity without inclusion is not really set up for success. So diversity is like being invited to the dance. Inclusion is being asked to dance. Some of you guys may have heard this quote before, but belonging is being able to pick the song, right? Being able to be a part of planning the event as well, right? Having a voice at the table, being truly heard, right? So employees, once again, take belonging to the bank. In God we trust. Everyone else bring data. Employees who feel a strong sense of belonging report that 56% of increase in job performance. So once again, if the team feels like they belong, they can perform 56% better. When we're looking at data, if my team can perform 56% better than everyone else in the marketplace, that means we're going to get more work. That means we're going to build on time and under budget. So once again, these data points speak to the financial importance of this. This isn't just soft and fluffy stuff. This is actual tangible in things that you can take back to your leadership team and see the importance of it. And sometimes, it sounds like fluff. People need to show up and just go to work, but you're forgetting about what drives the performance, going back to experiences, beliefs, actions, and results, right? So you can build this up, to understand there's a case for this, all right? So employees who feel like they belong are 3.5 times more likely to engage at work. And when you don't have engagement, that's not a good thing or a good recipe for any organization. And the last data point I want to point out here, organization with a high level of belonging achieved 2.3 times higher cash flow per employee. So when you have that type of cash flow going to the organization, when our margins sometimes aren't as thick, in this industry, depending on where are you at in the food chain of the organization or the industry of construction, sometimes margins are, real tight, especially on public work, right? So we need cash flow to be there, right? Especially when margin is so thin. So we need to really understand the importance of making sure individuals belong, right? The last thing I'd like to do before I go into this next segment, just you can put in the chats, or you can think for yourself, maybe write down. This is something you can do with your organizations, with your teams. Think about your company culture right now. What's one word you would say that would come to mind when you think of your culture? Maybe it's, hey, dynamic. Maybe it's family. Maybe it's engaging. Maybe it's, we had some people put down before, they had a macho culture, right? Whatever that means, right? Or they have a belonging culture. So you could do this with your teams, your organizations, maybe as a company. We've seen it where you do it with Post-it notes. You have everyone get in a group, they write on the Post-it and they put on the wall, and you go look at it and get a snapshot of what does your company's culture look like, and let people be really honest. There's a way to do this where they can do it where it's hidden so people don't know. It's something called Mentimeter. You can look at that online. You can get with your Mercedes. She could tell you more about that, where it can be confidential so people can be really raw and real about how they feel about their organization. So just kind of do a checkup from the neck up to see how your company's organizations is going, evolving. I like that, Jody. We call work culture, soft skills, and soft. Okay. I'm just reading through here. Sorry, you guys. I don't know if people normally do this, but I just want to make sure I'm not missing anything. If somebody wants to say, Jeremiah, shut up and move on. So it's a way to do this with your organization to kind of get a checkup from the neck up to see where your company's culture is at. All right. This is something I really want to. Oh, my slide's not moving. Is there moving? Did I freeze? There we go. This is the difference between fitting in and belonging, where I know some of us who's been in this industry for 5, 10, 20 plus years, maybe even longer, you felt like this before. And if you haven't, kudos to you. But you ever been part of an organization or a company or just a place where you felt like you were trying to fit in versus truly being able to be yourself? And being yourself means you actually belong. And sometimes you feel like you don't even fit in. Maybe you don't feel like you fit in this conversation. Maybe you don't feel like you fit in with this organization, possibly. Or any other organization you've been a part of in the past. But where have you felt like you actually truly can be your authentic self? So in companies, we help them understand the difference between fitting in versus belonging. So when you're fitting in, you're just conforming to the dominant society that's in there, right? These are where employees who try to fit in often change or suppress certain parts of their identity to align with the dominant culture and norms of the workplace. All right, versus when you belong, this is an inclusive inclusion and acceptance. Employees feel valued and accepted for who they truly are without needing to alter their identity. They're able to authentically be themselves. All right. So think of a time where you felt like you had to just, sometimes as, being in a male dominated industry, you feel like you have to be one of the guys. You have to participate in some of the conversations that you may not normally feel like you want to participate in, but it's just, it's just kind of the way it is. Right. So just, it's not that it's going to change overnight, but you just have to just think about it, right? And you have to bring some of this up to the forefront. We've had individuals share where they felt like, even as a craft worker, when they go inside the office, they don't feel like they belong in the office. They feel like the office is sometimes judging them, right? So even the overrepresented counterpart that may be out in the trades. And we always want to say diversity in this work is not an attack on white men. Once again, this is not an attack on white males. We're just speaking to how do we help people understand, how do we create more of an environment where different people from different walks of life can have the same opportunities that they may have been exposed to just because historically they just had that access point. All right. So even being a white male, you can feel like you don't necessarily fit in certain organizations, or you feel like you have to lose part of yourself to be in certain situations. So this is the way that all people, because diversity, equity, inclusion is for all. It's about even individuals that don't agree with what we agree with. That's the same thing we want to talk about early on. So it's really that understanding that all people fit into this, right? So going back to the fitting inside, surface level of acceptance, connections are released on superficial similarities. Hey, we're just at work. I just got to get this done. Like, I don't like you. You don't like me, but we got to do what we got to do to get this done, right? And that's sometimes business. Sometimes we do have to get there. But when we get into those deeper connections, when there's a sense of belonging, relationships are built on genuine understanding, mutual respect, and shared values, leading to a stronger team cohesion, all right? You're able to go a little bit deeper when you have that sense of belonging, when you know you're valued for who you are, what you bring to the table, and you could truly be your authentic self. The last part, stress and anxiety really leads up when you're just trying to be something that you're not, or you're just trying to fit in and just play this game because this is just where you're at right now. And as we said, stress and anxiety, it's a silent killer over life. Like, even these individuals that may be getting to retire, what does the quality of their life look like on the back end? What is the quality of your life looking out on the back end as you have to deal with this being something that you're not, versus well-being and confidence? And I can show up flat-footed, look you right in the baby blues. I don't have baby blues, but maybe you do, and be my authentic self. Then that promotes that well-being and that confidence and that sense of security. You're able to truly be that authentic self. So this is something we like to do. Maybe think or share in the chat where you felt like you didn't necessarily belong somewhere. Maybe it's not in the industry. Maybe it's outside the industry. Maybe it's at an event. Maybe, hey, there's some bars I walked to when I was in college in Kansas. I walked in, I knew I didn't belong. I closed the door and walked right out, right? And maybe there's some jobs you felt like you didn't belong in. Maybe there's some meetings you don't feel like you necessarily belong in. It's a safe environment. If you want to put in the chat or just write it down, think about that. That's something you can do amongst your team. Like, hey, we're going to do a little exercise, share a quick moment in time when you felt like you didn't fit in or you belonged. So when I shared that, when one of the craft workers shared, hey, they didn't feel like they belonged in the office. And then one of the office individuals shared they didn't feel like they belonged out on the job site. I was like, well, hey, office, hey, craft, introduce you guys. If you guys and gals don't know how to work together and can't trust each other and belong, we don't build efficient buildings, right? So you could see how they were just sharing for the first time, that they felt for the first time, and they heard each other, that there was a disconnect there. And that same time, even a craft worker, when they can share, or a tradesman or woman potentially feels like they don't feel like they belong in the office, what about when that new woman shows out to the job site for the first time? Maybe they can understand, even though it's not judging, it's not saying, hey, I got to be overcompensate, show up and try to roll out the red carpet for this individual, but you can understand if there's some disconnect there, because there's maybe something's happening based off of her experience that drives that belief, that creates that action, that produces that result. Maybe there's something there that's a challenge there. So if you can see where you don't belong in certain areas, then you can understand where other individuals may not feel like they belong as well. All right. All right, as we move in and land this plane on trust. Yeah, thank you for being here, being the only woman regional VP in a very large company, also non-drinker, very difficult team. Yes, Renee Schneider, I'm part of the non-drinking crew as well. I'm 2 years sober from alcohol. So congratulations if you are sort of celebrating any sobriety. I'm not necessarily having sobriety, I just choose not to drink. But congratulations, 24 years. Wow, amazing. So yeah, that could be very challenging. I understand that, right? But sometimes people like, oh, why do you don't drink? And it's like, there's it's so funny when you're like, why don't you drink? What happened? Like, hey, I just don't drink, like there's no need for me to explain that. But that could be a challenge there for some individuals. All right. So thank you everyone who shared. If I didn't get a chance to read anything in there, I apologize. Melissa, thank you for sharing. Thank you for leaning in and staying in. And I'm pretty sure at some point in time, as this industry evolves and grow, I don't know where you are in the world, but I acknowledge you for still showing up every single day and staying committed to just working and being a change in this space. And I know there will be breakthrough for you at some point. All right, as I land this plane on trust, trust is the foundation. This is where the rubber meets the road. This is where you can't have a dynamic culture. You can't have a space of belonging if there's no trust. I can trust someone, but I mean, I can love someone but not trust them, right? Trust can be more important than love depending on the situation. Like I may love a family member, but I may not trust them with certain things that they've shown that they can't deliver, with being on time or having my best interest in heart, right? Same like an employee. I may trust that, hey, I may get paid every single week as long as I show up and do the work, but I may not trust them to make me feel that I belong in an organization, right? So this is out of the Stephen Covey book, The Speed of Trust. If anyone's ever read it, it's the Bible on trust. I recommend anyone to, if you got any time in automotive view when you're on your way to work, just throw it in the Audible, or if you want to read the book, I love to read the hard copy. I've read it 3 times now. He really breaks down the business case for trust. Because sometimes, once again, we hear these terms of culture, belonging, trust, and it just sounds like fluffy, right? It sounds like sometimes just that mission statement that sits on the wall that people don't actually live every single day. But those words are there for a reason, because everything arises in language. Words have power, especially when it's backed up with action. So when we back up with action these true statements that we say, then there's a true business case and success case for them. So a firm belief in a reliable integrity and competence of team members or colleagues within an organization foster confidence, collaboration, open communication. So this is what trust is. There's the trust right in the middle, and it's based off of your character. This is based off of your integrity, your intent. And then your credibility outside of competence is your capabilities to produce results. So I may be an individual that you trust from an integrity standpoint. I have good intent, but maybe I don't have the capabilities. Maybe I don't have the results to prove why I may not be getting that promotion, right? I'm a good person, I work hard, but I may not be producing the results, or I need to develop some more skills to produce those results. So I have more confidence that individuals trust me in my competence, right? Or someone may be very good in their competence getting results. They got great capabilities, but we don't possibly know about their integrity or their intent or how they go about getting those results, right? So we may not necessarily trust their character. And sometimes in this industry, in a lot of industries in business, there's a lot of people like, hey, we got to be careful about sometimes their intent, their integrity, their character, what they're willing to do to get the job, right? Or what they're willing to do to get the business, all right? So this is just a checkup from the neck up, understanding where you at in certain relationships between character and trust. I have a dear friend, my business partner, his wife went through some health challenges over the past year, and it was very scary. What they didn't have a diagnosis for a while. She's finally healed. She's on the other side of it, but she trusts his character, right? She trusts his integrity, his intent to love and provide for that family. But when it came down to for the surgery to happen, he didn't have that type of confidence to go do the work required. So you could see how individual may have trust in two areas, in your character and your competence. So understanding where you at in certain parts of your life, in certain relationships, at work, where are you trusted at? And how do you trust others? Do you trust people in their character and their competence? And when you can have a solid stance in both of those, you can be very dynamic. All right. The last slide I'll have here before I go to the Q&A, that we're coming right up on time. Hopefully this has been valuable for you guys. We've done this presentation before, but no two presentations are ever the same, because it's like stepping in a river. When you step in the river twice, you're different and the water flowing through is different. So just like these presentations, they're always unique. So this is the business case for trust. All right. So here's an ROI. You're either getting an ROI of a trust tax, a negative ROI, or you're getting an ROI dividend, meaning it's working. So when trust is down, speed is down, cost goes up. All right. So case in point, I think Melissa, I'll just use you for example. You were in here, or my dear friend in Oakland. If I want to go bring a business deal to you, let's say I want to bring a real estate deal in, let's say downtown San Francisco. I got a deal, market's going down. I'm gonna buy this piece of property for $1 million. It's crazy to find a commercial space in San Francisco for $1 million right now, but actually my friend did. So $1 million property in San Francisco, let's go do it. You're gonna first say, hey, I don't know you. You do these workshops. I just met you from Naywick. I don't know you from, a can of Coca-Cola, right? I gotta slow down. I got to get to know you. I got to ask some more questions. I may have to hire a lawyer. I have to hire an attorney. I may have to get my accountant involved. So cost goes up. All right. But my business partner who lives in Phoenix, if I brought him the deal in San Francisco, because we've had more time together, our trust is higher, we can move a little bit faster and cost goes down. So when a team has dynamic trust, they're able to move faster and they're able to save money and they can perform. So trust equals performance plus fulfillment. You're able to have a better ROI. So through your organizations, through your families, through your companies, through your teams, when trust is low, you can feel it. Like you could just feel it in the energy. I don't trust this person. So things are going to slow down, costs are going to go up. So that's pretty much the business case for trust. All right. So now I'm going to stop sharing and pull it out for Q&A. Hopefully this was valuable. I think Lisa's going to come on as well too to support me in the Q&A if I missed anything. But yes, this has been a great session. I'm glad that you guys and gals were allowing me to come in here and share just a little bit of just who I am. Oh yes, the Mentimeter that Lisa dropped in there. But any questions, anything I missed? Thank you, Miss McDonald.
Hey, Jeremiah, while we're waiting for the attendees to post their questions either in the Q&A or the chat, number one, thank you so much. That was a lot of wonderful information that we can take back. What I'm hoping to understand a little bit better is because in my 12 years in this industry, I've noticed that sometimes the relationship's not there in the beginning to develop the trust, and yet we all have to work together. So do you have any insights or strategies on how to take some baby steps with the folks that just kind of aren't quite on your team, even though you have to work with them to develop better trust in that working relationship?
Yeah, I like to say, trust. Like I said, we have a deeper training that we unpack a lot of that, working with different companies, and so usually you can have your company hire us, and we'll come in and teach you the team how to do it. No, I'm joking. But here's something to give out. Trust is spelled Time. Once again, I'm gonna say it again. Trust is spelled Time. Time. You have to spend time. Trust isn't, built overnight. It takes time to build that trust and establish that. Now, based off of your background, your character, your competency, your ability to build teams and create successful organizations, and some people and individuals know how to build trust a little bit faster based just off their experience and just how they show up. Some individuals may struggle with that, even if they do maybe they do have the success. But you have to learn how to build that trust over time, right? It's built over time. It's investing time. It's getting to know your team members. It's getting to know the organization. If I don't know you, I can't grow you. That's a saying that we've used in the world of leadership. If I'm leading a team, if I don't know who my team members are, how can I develop you? There's also the other side that the mentee has or the employee has. They have a responsibility as well to show up and ask the right questions to be able to build that trust as well. So it's a deadly kind of back and forth of like who goes first, the chicken or the egg. But I always believe it's a responsibility of the leadership and the organization to create that open environment because they're the ones creating that as the individual Tony, I was slipping my mind from Zappos. He believed a leader's job is to create a greenhouse effect. A leader's job is not to be the tallest plant for everyone to marvel at and look at. Their job is to create the environment so other plants can grow and thrive, and then create more greenhouses so individuals can grow as well. So I think it's really important about creating that type of greenhouse effect so individuals can grow and develop. And it's getting to know them on a personal level over time as well. You understand that, hey, we are here to do a job where sometimes we don't get as personal. But when we know we have that type of personal relationship, we're able to build and establish that trust at a higher rate. So what is the best way you have found to get those resistant folks to buy into culture and belonging? Yeah, you just got to show them the data. We're not here to convert anyone. It's like, converting someone to a new religion, right? It's very challenging, right? The belonging and culture religion. Sometimes it feels like that. Sometimes it feels like a cult. So you have to understand that some individuals may just never get it. You have to just go where there's the least path of resistance and kind of back it up with data and try to show and point to models where this is happening at a higher rate. Well, we work with some clients here in the Northwest, and we just show, hey, who's doing it right and how is it working for their bottom line. Sometimes diversity, equity, and inclusion by design affects the bottom line. You know, you got to bring in the jingles sometimes, and you show them companies that are doing it the right way and they're actually winning work for it. If you look on the other side of the table, on some of the client side, when you're sitting down with some of the design team, when you're sitting down with the engineer, just sitting with the owner's rep or the owners, they're of diverse backgrounds now, especially in this market. So just naturally, you want to have individuals that can relate to them, the thing that matters to them, or even look like them. Because historically, all things being equal, people do business with who? People they know, they like, and they trust. So if I know you and I like you and I trust you, I have a better chance of doing business with you. So I may know you, but I have a better chance of liking you if you have some similarities into me. Like if maybe you look like me, you think like me, you share some of those same values. That's where business can start to go in the right direction. All right. Great points. Thank you. Thank you for asking. Any other?
Jeremiah, I have a quick question. Is there kind of like a technique or a strategy that can encourage folks to, I don't know, be more open to conversation, be more willing to participate? Because we do have some folks that are more of a stick in the mud than others.
Yeah, well, food, fire, music is one way. Food, fire, music brings people together, right? Fellowship, and icebreakers. And like I said, I don't know everyone's different background. I don't know what organizations you work for. It's very, very challenging. There's no silver bullet or 3-point process to create that. But we do some things like in some of our workshops. We do something called the hero, the highlight, and the hardship. You share, just, hey, just quick, some people call it toolbox talks. Hey, tell me about a highlight you had this week. Let me, and how I can celebrate you. Where, a lot of times people want to tell you the bad, right? And so like, how you doing? Like, oh, I'm doing great. But if someone said, I'm doing bad, or, how you doing? Oh man, I'm doing horrible. This, hey, that's a lot. I don't want to hear all that, right? Share a highlight. And I want to know how I can celebrate something that happened good for you this week. And so those are little ways to kind of build some of that positive conversation throughout the team. But as you get into some of more of these intimate conversations with your teams you're working with, hey, I want to understand you a little bit more and understand each other. We're going to share the quick little threes: the hero, the highlight, and the hardship. And some people, you keep it a safe environment. Obviously, every company organization is different. With HR, sometimes people share confidential information. Some people may not want to share that. Maybe you want to go surface level in the story when you're swimming. Maybe you want to snorkel and get a little bit deeper, or maybe you want to scuba, and some people get real deep and share what's there. We find that sometimes that helps you really understand what some people are fighting through or challenging. Maybe they lost someone very close to their family, someone's battling with a terminal illness. So you have a little bit more empathy, and people can see the humanity of other individuals. We had in one organization where a young lady who was from the Asian culture, and she's worked in the industry for I think over 15 years. When she came to this country, she went to work for her first job, not the company that we worked with on this workshop, and her employee couldn't say her name, her boss, and he told her to go home and pick a new name. And she was watching a television show and she picked this random name from one of her favorite actresses. And she's been that person ever since she decided that over 15 years ago. And she's been working at this new company now for 7 years and no one knew. And she just shared that right in front of the whole audience, right? We had crafts workers in there. We had PMs in there. We had one of the owners in the room, and no one knew her real name. And that's very common in certain cultures where they come to this country and they have to assimilate to the dynamic culture and lose a part of themselves in this world, the melting pot. People say America, we're a melting pot, but we melt away a lot of our culture and our identity to assimilate, right? So I don't like to use that word melting pot. I like to use, we should be a beautiful mosaic where it appreciates people from different walks of life. So at the end of the presentation, I turned and looked at her and I just said, hey, can you please share your real name with us? And I commented on, there was all these, men, macho guys in there, got their arms crossed. And she looked me right in the eyes and she shared her name. It was 2 syllables, and she starts to cry in front of the whole room. and these guys start crying in the room, right? So, sometimes that feels like kumbaya, that feels like, a lot for some people to bring up in this industry, and everyone still may not care. But for the first time, she felt like she was seen, she was heard, and she had a major breakthrough. And I don't know if she chose to, go with her original name moving forward, but there was like a breakthrough for the first time. She felt seen, heard, and she belonged, and people wanted to know. And people walked by, and they shook hands, some hugged her, and she had that sense of belonging there. So yeah, that's just one way. I don't know if I answered your question or not, but one way to get in and kind of ask people, hey, what's a highlight you would like to share? Try to do some retreats, try to get to know the organization a little bit better. And no two companies are ever exactly the same, so there's no like silver bullet for that. But there's other ways to do it, like again, hiring X Factor, and we'll come in and transform your company. No, I'm joking, totally joking. The change needs leader, decision maker, commitment to doing things different, demonstrate commitment. Yep. Start to the top. Starts at the top. But everyone's powerful. Everyone has a voice. Obviously, sometimes you got to be careful. You don't want to shake up the trees too much. But if you truly want change, someone has to be bold. Someone has to go first. Someone has to talk about what's happening, and once again, back it up. And God we trust, but everyone else bring the data points to back it up and show what's happening out in the marketplace in different areas that model your market too, because your market may be different than another market. Like, the Bay Area is very similar to the Seattle market, potentially, right? There's still some different nuances there. So you can speak to that. So try to find models to speak to the importance for this. But overall, this is just the way the human being is supposed to be empowered to work hard, right? It's not even just for diverse individuals, because even diversity, even white males have a sense of diversity based off of where they grew up, their background, because even the ethnic makeup of white Americans, they have an indigenous background based on their roots in Europe, right? So sometimes we just wash away all of our culture. I have this whole thing that in America we're emotionally homeless, culturally starving, meaning like we don't know our backgrounds because we don't pay attention to our history, even personal history of traumas we've been through historically, what we've been through as a nation, right? History is a great teacher, but no one's taking notes, right? It doesn't matter if you're not taking notes and learning for history, right? And if we're not careful, history doesn't always repeat itself, but it rhymes. So it's like understanding ourselves emotionally, our historical background, but culturally starving. Like we just live in America. It's like, hey, we're Black, we're white, and that's it. Not understanding the different cultural backgrounds. It's not always a color thing. Sometimes it's a cultural thing. And then understand the different nuances of gender as well. So yeah, I really, really appreciate that. I know we're right up at the top of the hour. I can ramble. I hope that this was impactful. You can find me on LinkedIn, just Jeremiah Captain. I think I was tagged in the image. I like reviews. The positive ones, the better. So hopefully this was impactful for everyone. I really, really appreciate it. This is a great group. I appreciate the engagement and sharing. Yeah, see you in Oakland sometime. You're on mute, Lisa.
Thank you so much. You can see it in the comments. We've all got our takeaways, whether it's, bring your data, sharing things out that is the hero, the highlight, and the hardship. We are a mosaic, not a melting pot. I mean, you brought it today, Jeremiah. Thank you so much for the inspiration, the takeaways, sharing those stories of that woman expressing her name for the first time. It gives me chills. And I just really appreciate you bringing this to us. X Factor Partners, check them out. Jeremiah's nonprofit organization, constructdiversity.com. And please do join us tomorrow. We're going to be hearing from Yenisei Bell and the New York chapter on supplier diversity. She's had 18 years of experience in construction, and she'll be explaining how to set effective goals and objectives to conduct an economic impact analysis and build a successful supplier diversity program. Appreciate y'all for being here. Jeremiah, thank you again so much for sharing your wisdom with us. And y'all have a wonderful week, and share out what you're doing for Construction Inclusion Week. Have a great one, everyone. Take care. See you next time.